Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that Kuro Games has struck again when it comes to the marketing that they're going to be doing for Wuthering Waves 3.0, and of course, Lynae, Roy, and Star Torch Academy. Because just 2 days ago, they dropped news about all of the 5 new characters that are going to be arriving with Lynae, Roy. And then immediately after that, not even 24 hours later, ladies and gentlemen, they've gone ahead and actually given out the details on who our first 3.x unit is going to be alongside their splash art. And it's going to be none other than the most recent one teased, Lynae. And I think we've got a lot to talk about over here. They've given us a bit of a lore dump on the type of individual she is. They provided us some updated visuals on everything going on with her design. And I think it's time for us to take the time to actually break down what the hell is going on over here, because this might be one of the most colorful and one of the most feature-rich splash arts I think we've ever seen in the history of the game. So let's go ahead, let's take this one piece by piece. Post-Lament, Anthropocene, Stars Intertwined, Outlaw Blue, Apollo Orange, Hazard Yellow, Acid Green. Want to guess what color is my next pick? That's a quote from Lynae. So we can see over here, definitely fits the vibe for whatever the hell is going on in this splash art, because you can tell that she is a big fan of colors. She's a big fan of painting, big fan of graffiti. And I think that really bleeds into the whole, I mean, let's just be honest here. She looks like a delinquent, right? She looks like somebody that's going to cause some issues. She's going to cause some problems. Excited to see what her characterization is going to be in the story, because this is an institute. If you're not fully aware, Star Torch Academy, it's an institute of, like, scientists, of academics, of professionals who are trying to further the advances of humanity and reach space. And she just looks like she's out to do nothing but prevent that from actually happening. But that's just my initial take regarding the colors and the graffiti and stuff. Let's read a little bit more about her. Lynae, a preparatory program student. And remember what I've said before when it comes to the drip marketing and the characters that we've seen over here. Kuro's doing a blend, right, of both professors and students. And one thing I said was that if Lynae ended up being a professor, then I have no idea what type of academy this actually is. So, great call on that one, Kuro Games. At Star Torch Academy, she's a free spirit with passion in her soul. Makes sense. She drives fast and, quote-unquote, paints boldly. Her dearest wish is for her trouble-free campus life to last forever. So, yeah, you can kind of see the vibes that are going on over here. Very, 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 like, I'm just gonna be honest. She seems like a character that a lot of individuals have mentioned it before with the release of Chisa, a character that's right out of an anime. That pretty much seems like the vibe of whatever is going on over here. And I'm excited to see how she fits into, like, the framing and the setting of, like, the Wuthering Waves world, because there's a lot of stuff going on, right? There's, like, tacit discords, there's, like, people dying, there's, like, city invasions and all of those things. And this idea of, like, you know, somebody being trouble-free, just having a bunch of fun, doing all of that, while the world around them is like, I'm just gonna be honest, the world's at risk of ending, right? That's why we're even on this, on the overall story of the game. Combining that with, you know, the whole carefree atmosphere, it is going to be really interesting to see. That's just it when it comes to, like, her characterization and her breakdown. It's always tough to do this with the 2.x units because it's always hard to do this with the 0.0 units like it was for Carlotta and Rosia in 2.0. It's going to be similar for Lynae and whoever the next drip marketed character is going to be for 3.0. Because we never seen these guys in the story before. We haven't even seen anything when it comes to, like, their voice acting, what they look like in trailers, all of those other things. So it's kind of just, like, all up in the air what the final results are going to be. But I think that Kuro Games has definitely done something pretty appealing already. And it should be tickling a couple of people's fancies. Now, that's just it when it comes to her characterization. Let's start talking about the actual visual stuff we're going to be seeing on the screen over here, because there's a lot to take in. I think the first and foremost thing that caught most people's attention when they saw this splash art was the gigantic fucking motorcycle. And the fact that with the motorcycle actually mentioned in her bio over here, I think that this is actually going to be a part of her kit. And I would be surprised if this wasn't a part of her kit, and if she doesn't have some sort of potential motorcycle form of exploration. Or vehicles and transportation of this kind is just the default type of transportation that we're going to have in 3.0, much like how flying was a thing in Renacita. And so, if they just decide that, like, vehicles are something that we're going to be using instead, and then every character kind of, like, has their own ride, that would be really interesting. But that does seem like a bit of a ridiculous ask on, like, the development end for every character to have their own vehicle. So that leads me to believe that this might be a little bit more related to her kit. And let's just be entirely honest here. When it comes to 3D action RPG gacha games and motorcycles, there are going to be some comparisons that people make right off the bat. And I'll just go ahead and make them right now, because I think we already know who the winner is, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Mavuika with her motorcycle. And one thing we know consistently across the entire Genshin Impact Natlan arc is that Mavuika's motorcycle makes absolutely no fucking sense and feels like it was added on in development, because you're literally in the land of, like, tribalistic wars and like I don't know, like, shit like that, and then out comes this random ass lady in a latex gimp bodysuit on a motorcycle. In this setting, in a sci-fi futuristic world where technology is clearly far beyond where it is in the present day, and people are literally making efforts to rebuild civilization in space, because that's what Star Torch Academy is doing. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, the motorcycle makes a lot more sense over here. And it's something that seems to be something that seems to be fitting into the overall lore of Wuthering Waves a lot more than it did in Genshin Impact. So I'm just going to give Wuwa the win over here before the comparisons even start when it comes to the motorcycle debate. I don't even think it's one that needs to begin. Now let's talk about all of the other shit that's going on over here. So you got, like, the graffiti in the background. You've clearly got, like, signposts that show a lot more of, like, this built out metropolis. You've got, like, litter on the floor over here. She clearly doesn't give a shit about rules or the environment. And a bunch of different graffiti arts in the back. So you can clearly see that painting, all of that, it's meant to be, I would think, a core part of her kit, and it's probably going to be how she ends up dealing damage. Spray cans everywhere, and a bunch of visual changes that are going to occur on the battlefield. One thing that I said was that I really want to see something similar to what Chu Yan has in her kit. And this is what I mean by that. So when Chu Yan gets the 6 Forte stacks, right, look what happens to the world around you. It turns black and white, while he's the one that stays in color. How amazing would it be if, while you were in this character's rotation or doing stuff with her on the team, you got a similar sort of filter, but instead it's in, like, this super neon glow? I think that would be awesome. And if that isn't in this character's kit and that isn't featured somewhere, seeing how absurdly vivid and vibrant this splash art is, I'm going to be really disappointed. So we'll just see how that works. Next up, let's take a look at some of the articles, the actual clothing, all of that. We've already described what I think about her clothing. I already said that, like, yeah, she's got that vibe. She's got that delinquent vibe for sure. And she's really approaching risque levels with the actual outfit that she's got going on. Probably don't need to make any additional comments over there. I think she wins the most Gunner points out of everybody total. She definitely wins the most Gunner points out of all the individuals that we've had in the lineup. Actually, no, Lucille is going to be close competition with her. But they're going to win. They're going to win the most Gunner points for different reasons. And I would say over here, everything else that she has going on with her design pretty much goes in line with it, right? I don't know if we knew that she had, like, a whole thigh strap thing going on over here, but that's very common in sort of like these asymmetrical designs. She's got, like, the loosened tie that kind of, like, goes all the way down, and Bet is going to be, like, flopping around everywhere during combat. And from what I'm seeing over here, it looks like that's like a bag or something along those lines, because she has that jacket that she's always hanging, like, around her back. I wonder how much she's going to be doing that in, like, combat or in the overworld. I wonder if her arm's actually going to get tired, because this seems to be the whole, like, jacket over the shoulder thing. It seems to be the most iconic part of her design, as far as I can see. She's doing it literally everywhere. And if you can see something that's attached to her jacket, some might think that she's a Glacio unit because of it. I don't really think so. She's got, like, one of those Glacio prisms I guess it's kind of like, it's like a clang bang or something, right? It's like a nice little ornament that she's got hanging onto either her jacket or a bag or whatever the hell that thing is over here. But I wouldn't really read too much into that because of the next part of the discussion that we're going to have. That's everything when it comes to her overall design. I've got to say it's pretty clear what's standing out the most over here, and that's going to be the colors. And that's actually going to be the motorcycle. And if I could actually make a take, she's one of the things that stands out the least in this splash art. And so I imagine all of this stuff in the background over here, that's actually going to be the stuff that takes center stage once her showcase, her kit, all of that stuff actually goes live. It should be a fun one. Now, let's talk a little bit about the potential roles that she's going to play in combat and in-game. Because I have a bit of a theory that's been cooking up. And to validate that theory, why don't we go ahead and take a look at their updated profile reveal for her, where they go a little bit more in depth and they give a bit of a story breakdown. So let's take a look at this one. Lynae picks up a can of homemade, quote-unquote, paint and starts spraying it into the air. A radiant spectrum of colors takes shape, flowing in midair as if it had a life of her own. So I think they have paint in quotation marks over here because the paint is essentially her forte. Right? And it's a little bit unfair for, somebody to say that their paint is real when they're creating it out of essentially their frequencies. So I think that's what they mean by quote unquote paint over there. Then I see a radiant spectrum of colors take shape. So before we've even taken a look at this, guys, there's something that I want to teach everybody about in class right now because it's Star Torch Academy, right? We're all about learning over here. Colors are like made from light. There's actually like a bunch of like books about that for just painting in general, and then there's the whole like color spectrum. You probably learned this shit when you were like 5, but maybe we need a refresher. The existence of colors itself, you can't have color without light, because when there's no light, you might have experienced this phenomenon before. When there's no like visible sources of light and then you close your eyes, it's gonna shock you guys. You might have done this before. Everything's black. Yeah, you can actually try it out right now. Like close your eyes and then cover them with your hands. Even when it's like light out, you could do this too. It's like it's a crazy hack. You can cover your eyes, close them, and then all you'll see is black. That's because there's no light, right? And when the sun is outside and then you close your eyes and then look at the sun, all you'll see is like red, because that's actually the sun illuminating the blood behind your eyelids. Yeah. I bet you guys didn't know that one. Long story short, this has essentially just been a discussion about the fact that I think this fucking character is Spectro. Because having such a big focus on colors in your kit, and knowing that colors don't literally exist at all unless there is light, I think it's pretty clear. I think it's pretty cut and paste. And one thing we know for certain is that Kuro loves being like fucking nerds when it comes to how they assign their attributes. This shit that they say over here that's related to science, that's a bigger signal about the role of a unit than any other things when it comes to colors. For example, the reason why Mavuika is Electro is because her sword is like magnetized, right? And it like kind of makes sense, right? You even see it like in this animation. The sword is literally magnetized together. Like that's the kind of like nerdy shit. Augusta, sorry, we talked about Mavuika earlier today. I got a little bit confused. For Augusta, her shit is literally magnetized together. And that's why she's Electro, even though she obviously looks like a fusion character. That shit that we're all very clear about, that's stuff that makes sense. A radiant spectrum of colors takes shape. This is a Spectro unit. And I'm gonna be real, maybe she is a Spectro Frazzle unit. Maybe she's a Spectro Frazzle unit that actually works with Chisa. Because how crazy would it be, guys? How insane would it be to have the delinquent character best in slot with like the nervous, shy character? The nervous, shy, slightly autistic character with the delinquent on her team. Isn't that an anime trope by itself as well? Genuinely. I feel like that by itself is like also an anime trope. Like, Lynae's gonna walk over here. Yeah, she's gonna take Chisa's lunch money and shit like that. That would make a ton of sense. And it would make even more sense when we consider the fact that Chisa currently has almost no synergy with the existing Spectral Frazzle units. And it would be awesome if Phoebe, Spectral Frazzle, Confession Phoebe, got a second teammate. Because right now, when you basically enter Confession mode, you work with one character in the game. And that's Zoni. And outside of working with Zoni, you basically don't have a fucking kit. And when this kit gives things like 100% Spectral Frazzle damage amplification, decreases Spectral res, and then also even gives more amplification on her weapon, she works with Zoni, great, right? But I'm pretty sure a lot of existing owners of her as well would be very happy if they could use her on a separate team. Because it's a lot to invest in stuff like this and then only have that usable on one team. And one character who's like the exact opposite of Phoebe that I'd like to show an example of that I think has been integrated well is Chakota. It's wild that Chakota came out after Phoebe and has like quadruple her teams. Because you can use this unit in so many different ways, even though she is the premium arrow erosion support. You can use this unit in a bunch of different arrow lineups, and she doesn't feel bad at all. But this unit over here was released before her. It's just Spectral Frazzle, and literally cannot support any other teams outside of one of them. I think it's her. I would really like for it to be her, because there are clearly some gaps in the roster that could really use a little bit of filling. And I feel like a Spectral Frazzle DPS that actually works with Chisa and can also use Phoebe would be the perfect fit going on over here. Now, let's actually go ahead and take a look at this thing and see if our suspicions are going to be confirmed. Okay, wait a second. Okay, so this is definitely just like straight up graffiti. And then in the middle, it looks like we summon like this is like an edgy cryo slime from Genshin Impact or something. What or is that like a cat? I guess that's a cat. Yeah. Nah, you're right. That's a cat. Okay. All right, they're just getting some of the close-ups over here. Her hairdo is ridiculous. That's just one thing that I want to say as well. Her hair is literally a mess. Yeah, I guess, now that I think about it, the cat is also a really big part of her art as well. I can't actually believe that I missed it, but I don't blame myself for missing it either. Because there's already so much stuff going on in this cutscene. And one thing that I also want to mention is that this is caution tape that she's just putting her foot on in the background. So I guess whatever she was doing prior to this, she was literally breaking the law. So we might also, I already mentioned it before, she is a delinquent, but we are probably also going to get arrested by the police with her in the story. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we end up at the goddamn police station because of the antics we get up to with her. She's going to send us to jail, boys. Get ready for it. You got to watch out for girls like that. They're adding a jail system for real. They're adding it specifically just for her story quest. That's going to be what we get from the art over here. We talked a little bit about the potential in her kit. We talked about a little bit when it comes to the potential in her design. What about her weapon? I've got no fucking clue, brother. I've got no clue at all. There has been absolutely nothing in any of this splash art or in any of her designs that would show me anything at all about the type of weapon that she's going to be, about anything that her combat style is. She could literally be like a Broadblade user and hit people with her motorcycle like Mavuika does. Or she could be like a Rectifier user and use that to summon her gradients, right? Summon her paint. I've got no clue, and I don't think anybody in their right mind could make any assumption at all about what she does. Maybe she's like Dante, and she actually uses pistols. And then she throws the motorcycle at people like Dante. It could be that shit as well, right? There's just so much stuff out there. Kuro loves their Devil May Cry references, so maybe she has Dante's motorcycle throw in her kit. I don't know. But all I'm going to say is that I am eagerly awaiting more and more news when it comes to this unit. I feel like there's so much more excitement now for like the future of the game when I see a design like this, because I think one of the main critiques that a lot of people had for the initial set of drip marketing that we got for Lynae Roy was that outside of hers, and even in hers itself, you could see how muted the graffiti is. You could see how muted this graffiti is compared to the actual art itself, right? This shit is like vibrant. This shit is like the saturation is turned up. Over here, it looks like the saturation is all turned down on that paint. And the feedback that a lot of people gave for all of the splash arts that we saw was that it's not like as colorful, right? It's not like as vibrant as like the 2.x roster, stuff like that. And that's why they weren't as excited. I think y'all just gotta wait for the splash arts, ladies and gentlemen, because you can see over here the absurd saturation shift. The absurd saturation shift that's going on over here just from drip to the actual reveal. And the last thing is that when it comes to critiquing these designs, guys, you also probably gotta wait until they're in the fucking game too, to just, because we all know that when it comes to Wuthering Waves models, guys, the models look better than the 2D art. I think that's something we can like unilaterally agree on. The models literally look better than the 2D art pretty much every single time. So we could just wait until we see the models too. That'll be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Our breakdown on everything Lynae. I'll see you all next time after Thanksgiving. Peace out.